every dog in America has access to a Hounds Town. We just firmly believe that our methodology towards dog management is really powerful. These dogs do so much for us humans at home, and it gives them an opportunity to just go be a dog. And our ultimate tagline is we do it for the dogs. And everything we do is kind of driven towards that mission.
Welcome to the Art of Franchise Marketing. Each episode takes a deep dive into the franchise space and explores how the biggest and best brands handle national branding, franchise development, employee recruitment, and localized marketing on a daily basis. This podcast is brought to you by Netsertive, a localized digital marketing partner for franchise networks. Netsertive's Madeline Park talks shop with franchise executives to discuss what's working, what's not, and answers the question, what else can you be doing to excel at the art of franchise marketing?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art of Franchise Marketing. Today we've got Rob, the CEO of Hounds Town USA. Rob, thank you for joining us. I love doing these because, quite frankly, I'm obsessed with dogs.
We're the right brand for you then.
Perfect. Well, Rob, we'll go ahead and get right into it. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, how you got into franchising, and more importantly, why you chose to build your career and lifestyle around these pups.
Well, like almost anybody in franchising, my go-to joke, it wasn't like I was an 8-year-old and I was like, I dream of being in franchising. If there is somebody like that, I would love to meet them. But like a lot of different folks, it was just the way life happened. I was in grad school. I had to pick between two teachers. It was Diane Israel, Dewey Freeman. Spur of the moment, I was like, I'm going to do it alphabetical by first name, pick Diane Israel. I needed a part-time job to buy some beer money in grad school. She put me in touch with her brother, Rob Israel, the founder of a franchise concept called Dot Popcorn. He was just starting. I was his first hire. We grew that brand and started franchising, and I started out as a franchise business consultant and then kind of grew in my career from there through operations. And now I really just partner with emerging brands to kind of harness and honor the founder magic is what I call it, but bring in the systems for franchising and franchise growth for those emerging brands. Bring them from a handful of locations to hundreds of locations. Mm-hmm.
And why did you stick with franchising? So it sounds like you kind of just fell into franchising, which most people are. What did you love about the franchising that you said you're kind of mixing that with that founder magic?
Yeah, I was actually just sharing the story with one of our team members today. Mm-hmm. And my grad school degree was in psychology. I went there to be a therapist. Mm-hmm. And I graduated and I was like, I don't like listening to people's problems every day. So I got into franchising where I listen to people's problems every day. But it actually is such, at its core, like on a certain surface level, franchising, it's a growth strategy for ownership. Sure. They could have gotten private equity. They could have used friends and family money, their own money. It's a growth strategy. But what I really connected with was the personal journey that a franchisee is going through. Mm-hmm. That I have seen folks who are coming from kind of working class, they got a little bit of money, they work really hard, and they end up being able to create often generational wealth. And when you talk about the American dream, and I know this sounds esoteric, but it really touched my heart. Like just seeing some of the most beautiful things through hard work, a perfect blend between the franchisor and the franchisee, and people really living that American dream. And to be part of an industry and then be partnered with a brand like Hounds Town that leans into that personal side of it, that's why I'm here, and that's probably why I'll be here until the day I retire, whenever that may be.
I love that. And it's funny that you say, I got tired of listening to people's problems. But franchising is a lot of listening to people's problems. I always say that franchise business coaches, consultants, field coaches, they really need honorary, degrees, because they really do have to coach through not only business, but a lot of what, life intervenes and entwines itself in that. But I think you took it one step further, or one step removed, because now, you're also dealing with dogs, and they can't really voice their problems to you. But when I was on a franchisor, we were expanding into service-based businesses, and I kept pushing to do something like Hounds Town USA is doing now, because it really is passion and empathy focus. So tell me a little bit more about Hounds Town USA, how many locations you have, what your mission is, and what that growth strategy is now.
Yeah, so Hounds Town, just quickly, was founded by a gentleman named Mike Gould. He was part of the New York City Police Department, and he was one of the founding members of using canine dogs on the police force. And you jump ahead, and he opened up the first Hounds Town over 20 years ago. But what really makes us different from a lot of other folks in the space, without knocking them, but we do it a little bit differently, is that we really replicate a natural pack environment. So dogs at their core are from wolves, they're pack animals. And using Mike's vision and his experience and his knowledge, created systems where we recreate a natural pack environment for dogs in our facilities. We build our facilities from 18 inches off the ground. So we really take into mind how dogs see the world. That can look like in our playrooms, we don't have 90-degree angles. 90-degree angles don't really exist in nature, and that can create anxiety for dogs if they get cornered. And we really find that is the magic for what Hounds Town does. You jump ahead into about 2013, 2014, Jackie Bondanza came aboard, Mike's wife. And she's really the one that saw the potential for the brand, kind of got it into franchising, and then around 15 locations is when I joined. I had done some consulting with Jackie in Hounds Town before I officially came aboard. And right now we're at 48 locations. We should be 50 locations in August, which is incredibly exciting. It's an amazing milestone. We have 58 locations in development. And when we talk about in development, it's not these multi-unit folks and they have the rights to 2 or 3, but they're not actually pursuing them. 58 of those are actively in real estate and construction. And what that's all geared towards for us is our 10-year target, which is that every dog in America has access to a Hounds Town. We just firmly believe that our methodology towards dog management is really powerful. These dogs do so much for us humans at home, and it gives them an opportunity to just go be a dog. And our ultimate tagline is we do it for the dogs, and everything we do is kind of driven towards that mission. Mm-hmm.
I want to make a call out to something you just said, because I talk with many, many brands with all different types of franchising strategies. And I will say that you are the first one to ever phrase it in a way that your clients or your customers, which are dogs, have access to a Hounds Town, have access to your brands. A lot of times I hear, well, we're going to be in this area, or customers get to have us, or we're gonna own their homes, we're gonna own this market, we're available in this market. But you're the first one to ever phrase it in a way where what you're providing, you're so confident in what you're providing, and you've seen the proof and you have the data, that you want every dog, in your case, to have access to you. Not that you have to use it, not that you're going to market to them, not that you're going to sell to them, but just that they have the ability if they so choose. And I think that is truly a differentiator just by how you're, developing this narrative, because there are so many I mean, I just don't even the marketing landscape with anything you want is just overwhelming to these days. And people say, "Oh, marketers are on
Absolutely.
the hook for this, franchising's on the hook for that." But I think what we're getting down to now is, the brass tacks of who's doing it right and why they're doing it right. Because there's a lot of ways to scale, a lot of good people you can bring in, vendors you can bring in to run your business. But I think the how and the why are what is setting a good business and a good franchise apart from the ones that are not.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, that 10-year target came from Jackie. I remember when she first told me, I was like, that's amazing. I felt the same way. What we also do, I just get excited about these things, and it's kind of a little bit more of the heart-driven aspect of it. But yes, I do think sometimes brands can get caught up in the open location game, and that's critical. It shows you're gaining market share. It's a very important key performance indicator. But what we do internally is, yeah, we talk about openings. We need to, so we can do our budgets and our forecasting and who we need to hire. But what really leads us is AUV for our franchisees and a profit goal for our franchisees. So when we speak with our franchisees, we call them townies. Hey, if we don't hit our open goal in 3 years, but we hit our AUV and our profit goals for our unit stores, thumbs up, we accomplished our mission. Because I think franchisees also get tired of hearing about just the opening stores, the opening stores, the opening stores. And they're like, well, what about me? Like, how am I doing? What are the unit economics that drive that future success?
And I think it's a great call out too that you mentioned the 50 units, that are going to be open and functional in August. And then what you have, in development. And there's a lot of controversy around in development because a lot of times people can sell a whole bunch, and more times than not, people don't realize that a big percentage don't ever open, right? I know a lot of franchises have that.
Correct.
Some degree. If you are outsourcing franchising, sometimes that percentage goes up because of the obligations for who's signing and how fast. But to have what you said in development, or actually in development and signed, is a great call out as well.
That is the actual in development. They're in real estate construction. Out of our, today 48 stores, about 15% of those are multi-units. And I think that's a strong sign of a healthy system, is that you have existing franchisees opening up multiple units, actually doing it. So we're really proud of that number. But again, it really just comes back to staying true to your foundation and why are we here and why are we in business? And it's our 10-year target. And then on the other hand, on the franchising side, what we have in place is something called the Journey to Freedom, that every franchisee that joins wants to be free. They want to be free from corporate America. They want freedom of time. They want freedom of money. And so we have a proactive program in place that guides them towards what that freedom number actually looks like. No guarantees. Can't predict what's going to happen in 10 years. But if you're going to do it, you may as well do it with a lot of heart and a lot of passion and a lot of integrity. And so those are really the two things that drive the brand as a whole.
And I think it's great that you have that path, because a lot of times they say follow the model, follow the model, follow the model, but following the model can be a lot different for someone who's in Florida versus California versus Maine. When I was in Made Pro, we have a franchisee, Michelle, who is incredible. She's always in the top 10 and she follows the model. Her start might have been a little different from, everybody else's, but everyone has their story. And I hear time and time again, I'm following the model and I'm not Michelle. I'm, 20 years deep. I followed the model and I'm not Michelle. And the fact that you guys are, working towards that path to freedom, how it might be unique and what that number needs to be for maybe a regional or that specific owner is super important because, of course, everyone looks at their top 10 franchisees and says, I want to be a gazillionaire, and I'm doing it, but I'm not there yet. To have that unique aspect and to understand that just like every dog, not one size fits all, is important to your structure's success and the success of each of your unit economics and ideally your franchise. And then switching gears here,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I just love what you're saying. It's so true. The numbers paint a picture, but it's not the person behind the numbers. And everybody, there could be an owner operator who, yeah, maybe the profit is a little bit different, but they're really happy. Mm-hmm. We really rely on franchise business review. We heavily use them to measure franchisee satisfaction. So we can really get into the data and understand, because you'd be surprised. Like, you can have a franchisee that's making a ton of money, very profitable, but they're not actually happy. Well, why? Like, that matters. And you have to really understand that why and where are they in that journey. And then, we also preach here almost every day. You've met one franchisee, you've only met one franchisee. They each have an individual story, an individual journey, and you have to adapt the overall gestalt of your program, but then also individualize it to the person who's going through it.
And I think that that's a great call out, because so many times as a franchisor, you get focused on, like you said, the new openings, the new growth, what can we add, what can we do, when really sometimes you have to pull it back and realize where are the gaps in the current offerings we have, what is not being implemented, what needs to be optimized. So it's not always about adding, growing, innovating, but just fixing and nurturing what you have already. My next question is, this can be difficult with the business you're in, because your customers don't speak English per se. You have the dogs, and of course you have the owners, and you are surveying what your customers want in terms of the dog owners, and what you have in terms of maybe your industry expertise. But how are you crafting your marketing and your operations to make sure that you're staying true to that original founder of the pack, and making sure that you're staying in line with what your original mission was, when I think that there's a lot of ways that you could veer off track for making a quick buck?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that applies to a lot of brands. You kind of start off with this magic or whatever it is. You get to a certain size and scale, franchisees are asking for something, customers may be asking for something, and then how do you evaluate, is that moving away from a really core piece of who we are, or is that potentially a sacred cow that served you a decade ago but doesn't serve you today? So what we do, and this is us, this may work for other folks or not, is we have our brand statement is also one of our value statements. We do it for the dogs. So any strategy, every decision, whatever we're looking at, we use kind of a discipline to come back and look at the decision and say, does this help the dog? First and foremost. I take this from Mike as well. They say you should always listen to your customer. The customer is always right. We say our customer is the dog. If we are creating that natural pack, if the dogs are going home with what we call the Hounds Town hangover, the dogs are then communicating that in their way to the customer, the human who is paying for it. But whatever we put in, whatever we look at, revenue streams, strategy, whatever it is, technology, it always comes back to us, to the dog first. Always. If there was something that could potentially make us more money at the unit level, but it didn't live to our value of we do it for the dog, we're not going to do it. Because if we lose track of that North Star, then the brand starts trying to be something to everybody, and you end up being nothing to everybody.
And that kind of answers my next question, because I was going to say a lot of times, like say for home services, which is my forte, you want to add maybe a new revenue vertical for your franchise or franchisees. Like for me, home cleaning, we were like, let's add carpet cleaning. You know, that kind of goes in line. But with, you know, dog services, I'm like, what for me? I'm like, what is that? Is that like grooming? Is that, you know, a retail shop? Is it another animal? Because a lot of times pet owners have a different brand of, you know, or different brand, you know, I'm clearly in marketing, a different type of animal. So I'm like, does it involve now, is it Cats Town? Is it, you know, Birds Town? And you kind of just answered that with we need to stay with our North Star. And yes, we could be a very good pet resort for everything, but that doesn't, it kind of dilutes what you're doing, right? Being a Cats Town USA probably doesn't benefit your dogs per se. So I really, really like that aspect.
Yeah, we have different initiatives in place, different revenue streams, you know, in the 3-year pipeline. But all of them, before they even see the light of day, before they get tested, we're really working not just internally, but with our franchisees, you know, through our advisory councils and different committees to be like, hey, how does this work? Because at the end of the day, the franchisees are the ones doing it every single day. They are closer to the dogs. They're closer to the customer. And whatever we do, it just has to serve two things. It has to drive a profit. There's no point doing it if it doesn't. And it has to fit with the mission of the brand. And it's hard. Like, I've been part of different brands, consulted with a lot of different brands. I get it. These can be those decisions that can make or slow your growth in a way. But I find that if you take the time, you can actually really see where your brand needs to go.
So what's next for Hounds Town USA? What, you know, can you give us a little insight into, outside of just growing location wise, you know, where are you hoping the brand can go and provide and do?
Yeah. So when we look at that kind of 10-year lifespan, it's really seeing our dog management approach, which today kind of exists within the 4 walls. But how does that as a brand start to expand outside of those 4 walls and creating a different perception of dogs? There's a lot of things out there, again, with all respect to everything else that's out there, that are quote unquote for dogs, but it's really just a human brain thinks it's for the dog, but it's really not. And it's really understanding how can we recreate this natural pack environment in our 4 walls, but how does the brand expand so that when that dog is at your home, we are training and doing different things so that dogs can have an experience of a pack within their homes. There's a lot of growth for this brand outside of just daycare and boarding. And those are all in our pipeline as part of our 5-year, 10-year plans.
Where do you guys want to be in the next 10 years? What is your goals outside of just obviously expanding and bringing Hounds Town to every dog, in the U.S. or beyond? What does that look like for you guys?
So for us, yes, we have our 10-year target. Every dog has access to a Hounds Town. But we firmly see that there is a growth opportunity for our dog management approach that today exists within the Hounds Town, inside the 4 walls. But we see a massive opportunity for it to expand outside of the 4 walls. There are so many things, specifically in America, that are done for dogs because humans think it's good for the dog, but it's not as healthy for them. It creates a lot of anxiety for dogs, creates a lot of those behaviors that we see with, separation anxiety, and all types of different things that dogs do when they feel anxious. So expanding our dog management approach to a larger dog philosophy and bringing that to customers that may not even need daycare or boarding, but could start incorporating how we view dogs and how we interact with dogs, and bringing that into like the homes where they live.
And I appreciate that. And, kind of like I'm a very big dog person, lots of dogs. My dog used to go to a doggy daycare in Boston. Wasn't a franchise, but, it was the only option where I was. And it was a big cement room where they would just go to the bathroom, and it was all cement and brick. And I was like, ooh, this isn't cohesive to going outside, but very, like you said, lots of 90-degree angles. And after a while, I noticed that he hated being with other dogs, and he would just sit in the owner's chair all day because it had so much anxiety. And that's just where he felt like his normal habitat now was just in an office chair, because he was used to being with me or in his bed. And I would take him there to get, interaction and have that. What I wanted was, that doggy hangover where he works out and he's excited and then he sleeps at home. And, that wasn't what I was getting. And then I realized I was being pushed to dog food that wasn't necessarily good for them, but all of a marketing ploy. So I can appreciate, your goal of not only, expanding your business on an operations front for your franchisees, but also, molding the industry to be better suited for the dogs, which goes back to your mission of, is it good for the dogs?
Yeah. I hear stories like yours all the time where they took it to this other kind of place. And look, I get it. And it's, a lot of times it's perfectly okay. But, when I hear that your dog was being brought out to be in the office chair, that's not forming the pack. And so if you form the pack accurately and correctly, the dogs do the work themselves. You don't need to do a whole lot because they're playing with themselves. They self-regulate. They know how to be in packs. It's built into their DNA, and that creates the Hounds Town hangover. And it's really just a methodology to creating the pack.
And I think too, a lot of brands talk to me about, how do I make my mission? Is my mission, my logo could change, my services could change, but you tell me the mission shouldn't change. And, you guys are such a great testament to a mission that can stand the test of time. Is it good for the dogs? And it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be this huge chat GPT generated paragraph of why you guys are doing what you're doing. In essence, it can just really go down to the reason why you created this. Now, we are coming up on time, but my next question, kind of my final big topic is, clearly, whoever you're bringing into your franchise has to be, the right candidate. You're not just signing up anyone. But how difficult is it for you to find those right candidates? Because I would imagine it's easier for other brands who are more business suited, home services, business services, product. But for you guys, and similar to like a Wild Birds, I guess, you have to find those people that are very passionate for that specific customer, which for you guys is dogs. Does that limit your pool down a lot, or is the love for dogs big enough that you really don't see a difference in lead flow?
Yeah, we don't see a difference. What we're primarily looking at are resonating with our values and our brand mission. Mm-hmm. And it is a heart-driven brand, but you also, my joke at Approval Day is, nobody is here to run a nonprofit. So it's understanding how to run the business part of it while also honoring, the heart-driven part of the brand. And what I have just learned, and this is just me, there could be a million ways to do this, is that it really comes down to understanding the personalities you're bringing in dependent on your stage of growth. So if Hounds Town was 700 locations, we're going to want to attract a very different type of personality. because at 700 units, you're at a completely different type of system development, a completely different type of growth. You're in a completely different stage versus where we are at 50 units and growing. We want to attract a different type of personality. So we use different softwares and personality surveys to really benchmark the franchisee before they join to understand their fit as well as we can. And we feel very fortunate that, knock on wood, to date, our pipeline is strong and we haven't seen any type of limitation there.
Yeah, I think that that's incredible, and we do have a lot of high level franchisee, or I should say qualified franchise candidates that listen in, and to hear about the kind of the booming demand for franchising, whether it's super niche like the dog industry, all the way up to QSR or quick service restaurant is really motivating and exciting for us. And then also I really like that you said, it's a heart driven brand, because, I'm in home cleaning. It's not heart driven. Sure, I like to help people, but my heart is not driven by cleaning toilets. My heart is not driven by killing mosquitoes. So there is that difference there. But also to your point, you guys are not buying in to run a nonprofit. Which is a really great way to phrase being passionate, but also knowing you need to make money. So, Rob, I want to end by asking you my two final questions, but for you, it's going to be three. One, which is,
Oh,
if you
three questions.
only ever own or recommend or have the world just have one breed of dog, what breed would it be? And then my following questions are, if you have a piece of advice to give to a franchisor, what would that be? And if you had one piece of advice to give to a franchisee, what would that be?
Oh, those are great questions. Great questions. I'll try to be concise. So I'm biased. My dog is sleeping right over there. You can't see her, but she's a Brittany Spaniel. I think that's one of the best breeds. It's about 40 pounds, so big enough that I can bring her camping and go on hikes, but not so big that she just bowls over my 6-year-old. She is so calm and patient with my daughter from the day she was born. Brittany Spaniels all day long. That's the one I would always recommend. To the franchisor, wow. And again, it really depends on what stage of growth they're in. I'll focus this to what is commonly called an emerging brand. Is allow operations to drive your sales, not the other way around. So keep a really close eye on your franchisee satisfaction, your unit economics. How are your franchisees performing? Allow that to drive how many you're looking to sell as much as you possibly can. I get it. A lot of emerging brands need to sell to kind of fund the growth. And I would add a kind of a caveat to that, or a point two. Before you even get into franchising, if you've never done anything with it and you're a founder, it's a very unique growth strategy. You are legitimately using other people's money to grow your brand. And they are owed ethically for that ownership group to do everything they can to understand franchising, hire people who understand franchising, because otherwise you're playing Russian roulette with other people's life savings. And I think that's a disservice to folks when ownership isn't really honoring that part of it. You need, and this is kind of the number that just gets thrown around, but if you're looking to franchise, you're going to need access to close to $1 million, if not more, to appropriately fund your business. You don't want to get to the point where you have to sell to fund everything you're looking to do. It will typically put you into a place where you're too heavy with what's coming behind you, but you don't have the systems to support them as they open. For franchisees, this is some work I did back in the day as a consultant. I wasn't a broker, but when franchisees came in, I would work with them to say, hey, here's what you need to understand in an FDD. Here's what the franchisor is saying, kind of translating the legal jargon. But what I would always start off with any franchisee is understanding that the franchisor takes their brand standards manual as sacrosanct. It doesn't mean that you don't have a voice. You can even end up having a vote if you're part of a committee or part of an advisory council. But ultimately, the franchisor is responsible for the brand and the standards of that brand. And I think sometimes I see people get into franchising and they just have in the back of their mind that they're going to be able to do it their own way, or they can change that logo, or they don't have to really follow that standard. And then they get surprised when the franchisor comes in. I would always tell franchisees, before they ever sign, it's understanding that the franchisor-franchisee relationship is very nuanced. In one way, there's a partnership. They're using their life savings, their money to help grow the brand. There's a partnership. The franchisee is the customer of the franchisor. They pay a royalty. They get services. And to just throw a little, caveat into it, there is a very important contract that is in place that really outlines the entire dynamics of the relationship. And so do your due diligence, do your research, really understand what franchising is before you, and make sure it's the right fit for your personality.
I think that
I tried to make that as quick as I could.
No, it's perfect because you gave us, insight into what a great dog breed. And then also, there is quantitative and qualitative data behind what it takes to be a successful franchisee and franchisor. I think a lot of people sometimes think it's subjective, but when you drill down to it, franchise is about operations. There are certain parameters of what's needed for you to find success. And then there's also the qualitative, meaning, your quality of support, your quality of life, that can't necessarily drive a number to, but it's not subjective. It's what you need to do it. So I really appreciate that. And Rob, before we go, tell me briefly about what this Hounds Town Foundation is, because you guys don't just give back, but you've developed programs around doing so. So I definitely want to shine a little light on that as well.
Yeah, giving back to the local communities is another foundation of the brand, one of our values. And I have to give the credit to Mike and Jackie, the founders. Again, no knock on a lot of other nonprofits out there but ultimately what they do is kind of drive some money and then they give it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And what we wanted to do was to do something a little bit more direct. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what the charity will do is partner with a lot of different organizations, use the local Hounds Towns for adoptions, and be able to work with dogs that may have been in a certain kind of place. We've worked with jails before. And yeah, part of it, sure, raising money, being able to do that. But the bulk of what the charity is focused on is doing something that gives back to the community in a more direct manner.
And if people want to learn more, get involved, donate, where should they go? Should they go to their local Hounds Town? Should they go to a certain website? What's the best place for that?
Yeah, if you just go online, if you just type into Google Hounds Town USA charities, the website will pop right on up. That's the best place to look for the charity. On the consumer side, Hounds Town USA, and then Hounds Town USA franchising. Those are kind of our three arms, if you will. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Listen, Rob, thank you so much for joining us. If anyone's listening and they hear a little
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, this is we're working through all the Zoom interviews, but I appreciate it because we can get people like you on. I'm so glad to have you in our podcast community. I'm so glad to have you guys pushing the success of both business franchising and our sweet little pups as well. And we're excited to watch you grow.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Franchise Marketing. This show is brought to you by Netsertive. We help franchise brands and multi-location businesses run localized digital marketing at scale. To learn more, visit netsertive.com.